Welcome to an Eastern Conference Finals edition of the Putback on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, host of the Putback, and we're going to talk Knicks-Pacers for the next 30 minutes or so with two great guests. One, NBA senior writer for The Athletic, Joe Vardon. Joe told us before the show that this is his 11th straight conference finals. He covered the Cavs for a long time, and he spent many of previous springs in Boston. So here he is in New York, ready for the series. We've got Dexter Henry. Knicks fans know him from everywhere, but he is also the host of New York Post Sports Digital. Does a great job there, keeps his finger on the pulse of the Knicks. And gentlemen, as always, we're going to start with the baseline. Here we have it. Knicks-Pacers Eastern Conference Finals. Knicks' first conference finals appearance in 25 years. Pacers back for the second year in a row. You know, I went to the Knicks practice facility yesterday, and I'm walking in, and I'm thinking, I've never been here for a practice at this point of the year. Usually, if anything, I'm coming up for a draft workout or a coach has been fired press conference, and here we are. Eastern Conference Finals. So a very different scene at the practice facility yesterday for me. And I want to get right into it, though, guys. From a X's and O's basketball perspective, what do you think is going to be a key in terms of the Pacers imposing themselves on the Knicks? And Joe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about that since almost the moment that they bounced the Cavs in 5 games. It was interesting. It was either before game 5 or after, I can't remember. But Cavs coach Kenny Atkinson compared the Pacers to a college team, and he said it as a term of endearment. You hear about the pace or the tempo at which the Pacers play, but that can be a little bit misleading because it's not just that they get the missed shot and get out into transition, or even that they take the ball out of the basket and throw it ahead quickly. They start on defense by pressing 94 feet. And it was too much for a somewhat banged up. We could talk a little bit about that, or not, because the Cavs are done. But the Cavs maybe didn't have all the horses, and certainly over a 5-game series, they wore down. They could not sustain the level at which the Pacers play. So you get into this Knicks situation, and on paper, as we know, they don't play a ton of guys. And so the same basic question is, will the Pacers, just the way they play, is that too much for the Knicks over a 7-game series? The big difference is the Knicks are mentally tough. They just have tougher guys than the Cavs do right now. So, and they're in better shape. I don't know what else you could say about this. I mean, the Cavs were so thoroughly gassed at the ends of those games, and the Knicks, with the short rotation at which they play, they're coming back from 20 points down against one of the best teams, out there last series. So you wonder if the mental toughness and physical conditioning of the Knicks will mitigate that factor from the Pacers side, but the Pacers play at a pace that you're just not that used to in the NBA.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Is it Jalen Brunson dealing with that ball pressure? Do they have Josh Hart bring the ball up? Is it someone else? How do they break the pressure? Because if you're asking Brunson to bring the ball up against that full court pressure every time, that's going to wear on him a bit, I would think. So that's an interesting one to take a look at. Dexter, how about you? What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at, a lot of what Joe said I thought was really good in terms of the pace. And you look at how the Pacers have played since January 1st. They're within the top 10 in pace. But I think the most impressive thing with them is they were number 1 in assist to turnover ratio. This is a team that does not turn the ball over a lot at all whatsoever. The Knicks are one of those teams too. So who dominates the pace is going to be really important here. I think where the Knicks could have an edge here, as you heard Joe talk about the toughness, is what they can do on the glass. Mitchell Robinson has been so key for them during this postseason. If he's able to get them second chance opportunities, that could bode well for the Knicks. So I think that's a way they can control the pace. I do worry a little bit about what you brought up there, Ian, in the fact they're going to press Brunson full court. Is Josh Hart going to take some of that ball handling responsibilities? Will we also see that from Mikal Bridges? That is something the Knicks have been able to use. So I think how the Knicks are able to preserve Brunson's energy against the defense of the Pacers is going to be really important. And then when the Knicks are in the half court, guys, how that half-court offense looks, because if they are efficient, if the Knicks also themselves are able to get some easy baskets in transition, if they're able to add some pace, pun intended here, that can help them in this series against the Pacers. So very interesting clash of styles here in this conference finals matchup.
Yeah, the Knicks are always at their best offensively when they do get stops and they can go push the pace the other direction. I wonder, from a transition defense standpoint, Knicks have been up and down there. They were very good game 6 against Boston. They were not good game 5, and that's going to be important in this series. And then, just defending Tyrese Halliburton, it's an obvious one, but you have options there if you're Tom Thibodeau. You have Mikal Bridges, you have Josh Hart, you even have OG Anunoby. Who do you go to? Does it work? How do you adjust? That's what I'm keeping an eye on as well. And so, guys, we were talking about it a little bit before the show, but I certainly, all year long, I was saying the Knicks could not beat the Celtics. I said if both teams were healthy, which they were, by the way, pretty much. I know Porzingis was sick, and then before Tatum got hurt, the Celtics were pretty much whole. Knicks were whole. Celtics missing Sam Hauser. But I did not think in that scenario Knicks would beat the Celtics. I was dead wrong all year long. I mean, Joe, what was your read on it going into this thing?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in interviews like this would almost poo-poo that series. Like that one was the foregone conclusion. Dexter and I were talking off air just about how wrong you can be when you get into trying to handicap some of these series. But I think, I do think, and this is, I guess, my biggest word of caution for the Knicks going into this next round. What Brad Stevens said yesterday in Boston was right. The Celtics did blow those first 2 games. I mean, you're at home. They have the firepower that they had. Tatum's not hurt yet, and they're up 20. And to go into the offensive funk that they did, you can't account for that. So good for the Knicks to take advantage of it. You can't account for it as a handicapper. I mean, so good for the Knicks to take advantage of that. But I guess we're in the Eastern Conference Finals. There's 4 teams left in the whole league out of 30, and we are still asking the basic question of how good are the Knicks actually. It was an underwhelming regular season. They did go 0-10 against the Cavs, Celtics, and Thunder. And guess what? Only one of those teams are left. So, part of this is like sort of the battle of attrition. Can you survive? The Knicks have survived to this point. I think what we've seen, it's interesting. The Pacers, they play with such maturity at the end of these games. They did not make mistakes in any of the close games, whereas the Cavs did. They crumbled throughout. The Knicks, though, I just feel like they are so tested in these late game situations, and Brunson obviously being the clutch player that he is, it's another case of like strength versus strength here. Maybe they both do that well.
Dexter, I mean, for you coming into this, I think you actually might have been one of the select few that thought the Knicks had a shot. Am I wrong?
No, you're wrong. I was not that person. That wasn't me. I picked the Celtics in 6. And Ian, look, you and I you were obviously at all these games. I was at a good amount of these games this year. And I saw a couple of the Celtics games, and the Knicks looked like they were outclassed in those games. We all saw this. We all watched this. They looked like they were outclassed. But in the middle of the season, I was doing the show, and I brought up the question that Joe just brought up, the point that he made, which is, are the Knicks, is their identity being clutch? And I watched this after they had won games back-to-back on the road in Memphis and then Miami. And the Knicks in tight games, they seem to be fine. They seem to know what they're doing. They know how to handle their offense. Obviously, they have the clutch player of the year, as was mentioned in Jalen Brunson, and how tremendous he is in clutch situations. But I think that has only grown for this team throughout the playoffs. They have become stronger in their resolve there. And they didn't have close games against the Celtics, so we never knew what that could look like. Now they've played in close games. Now that they've slayed the dragon, to say, I do think this can bode well for this team moving forward in terms of their confidence, because they have done it. But I think where I would proceed with a little bit of caution for the Knicks fans out there is that what you have seen, especially in the Celtics series, they were down in 14 in every game except for game 6. You have to say you don't want to play with your food. And I'm not calling the Pacers food, because I'm respecting the opponent, but I don't think you want to get into a habit of being down to opponents and coming back and then putting yourself in stressful clutch situations often. I think at times it has to look somewhat like it did in Game 6, where you can be dominant from your start, have your foot on the gas, and move forward. So I do think this Knicks team is tested. But yeah, Ian, no, I did not pick them to beat the Celtics. I wasn't that guy.
I was trying to take care of you there, but all right.
You tried.
Joe, Indiana, they didn't start the regular season out strongly, right? Like
No.
Halliburton, it seemed like he was banged up still, dealing with something. And then they do what they do the last few months. I mean, just paying attention to from afar and then seeing it up close in this series. What has changed with this team and what is working so well for them right now?
Well, Ian, you bring up a great point. They got off to a terrible start, and Tyrese Halliburton was certainly getting off to the worst start of his career. And then beyond that, they had injuries on the perimeter. So, you already have a team that has this reputation of not being very sound defensively, and then they were hurt there in those spots where they actually have strong defenders. But right around, I went with the Pacers to Paris for the series against the Spurs with Wemby there, and right around that time is when they were really starting to feel better about themselves. Like, guys were getting back and they were healthy, and they had learned something. They had found something on defense that they could lock into, and they started to practice it. Nembhard was making a much bigger impact, like healthy and out there on the perimeter, and Mathurin, who was out, for the playoffs last year. So everything was starting to come together. And, what you wind up with is a team that finished the year 40-15. So, they couldn't quite catch the Knicks for third, but they were a team that found that. I don't know if you want to say found its identity or I think it's more accurate to say that sort of like reconnected with it right around that January mark, and certainly has been one of the best teams in the NBA since.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. And like the Knicks, they went 2-1 against Indiana in the regular season. But after what the Knicks did against Boston and what Indiana has done since that January point on, regular season, I don't even think it's worth taking a lot of time to talk about. But I know that in talking to some of the guys yesterday after practice, Jalen Brunson said the loss last year in the postseason still stings because they lost. Josh Hart talked about how this group is just different than last year's group. They went into that series hobbled. They came out of it even more hobbled, and this team is healthy. So it's a different team, and the mindset. Look, I thought late regular season, this group did not have I want to say fortitude, maybe that's putting it too plainly, but fortitude to come through and come back from tough late game situations, certainly to come back from 20-point deficits to one of the best teams in the NBA on the road. I was dead wrong there too. Something has happened here where this team, whether it's just a product of having been together for long enough or if something else clicked here, but something's different. This team is playing in a way with a cohesion that I hadn't seen most of the regular season, and it's surprising to me. Dexter, for you, when you look at where the Knicks are coming into this one, you have them favored against Indiana if you were to make a pick?
Yeah, if I was to make a pick, I would have them favored, Ian, very, very slightly. But as Joe and I were talking about this off air, we could see this going many different ways. I think what you would like if you're going to favor the Knicks is you like some of the things we've talked about already. You have to like their resolve, their toughness, the fact that I think most people agree they have the best player in the series in Jalen Brunson. You also have to like the fact that their bigs can be a force here against this Indiana Pacers team. Now, one thing to note is this Pacers-Knicks matchup during the regular season, the Pacers I'm talking about, did not see Mitchell Robinson. So he's a big extra factor for me. I'm sure we'll get to that later. But I think the reason I like is that there's some motivation there too. I think that matters for the Knicks losing to this team last year. The home court advantage they will have. It's why I give the Knicks a slight edge. And I just think they're a little bit more battle-tested. And so I'm leaning Knicks here in this series.
It's fair. It's fair. And, the difference between this year's team and last year's team, it's stark because of Mitchell Robinson being out most of the year this year. No Isaiah Hartenstein, no Dante DiVincenzo. no Julius Randle. So the team didn't defend at the level that it did last season, this year. Didn't rebound the ball on the offensive glass the same way it did last year. But it has seemed to find itself here. And defensively, the numbers are better in the postseason. And Tom Thibodeau said yesterday he thought the defense started to trend in the right direction in the second half. And when Jalen Brunson was out for a month, defensive numbers were strong. And then they've kind of continued, not at that level, but at a passable level here where the Knicks defense is not the turnstile that it was on some nights during the regular season. So, yeah, so the Knicks seem like a team that Brad Stevens also said this yesterday, that they're kind of peaking at the right time. It seems like there's another level for them to go. Let's get into the stars of this series, right? We got Tyrese Halliburton, Jalen Brunson. Those guys are going to be the headliner. That's what the league is going to be using to promote the series, and it's definitely an intriguing matchup for you, Joe. What do you think about the Halliburton series against Cleveland, and how do you think the Knicks will try to contain him?
So the Cavs used Max Strus on Tyrese. Much bigger body, 6'6", pretty thick guy. But part of that was, the Cavs try to hide Darius Garland or whoever's playing in his place defensively. Ty Jerome was another candidate there. So they were trying to move that guy off of Tyrese. The Knicks, I feel like, are more versatile with their starting lineup here as far as how they can deal with Halliburton. He was all right. Obviously he hit the great shot to win game 2. He had struggled up until that point. They sort of all caught their wind by game 4, and then game 5 they came back from a nice little early hole. So, Tyrese is doing fine. Pascal Siakam had a great series. Miles Turner had a very strong series. And then I really respect Nembhard and, Naismith too. He was nice, but I do like the sort of the switchability and the versatility in the Knicks starting lineup. I covered the Team USA team where Steve Kerr was playing Josh Hart at the 4, which I actually think could help them a little bit in this series, if they ask Josh to guard up a little bit. So, love the versatility among the Knicks starters, but it comes back. I know we're talking about that one singular player with Halliburton, but I'm just wondering if once you get past 5-on-5, how do the Knicks keep up with, playing one or two other guys?
Sure. No, it's I'm sure Tom Thibodeau is probably thinking about that right now and going through the scenarios. And also with Jalen Brunson, I mean, he's going to have to deal with a strong defender in Aaron Nesmith. I know.
Yes.
I think he got labeled the Brunson stopper in some corners because of the postseason when they put Nesmith on Brunson. Brunson had a tough time. If you look at one of those regular season games, I think Brunson just came out roaring with Nesmith on him. I don't know if he had a point he wanted to prove or not, but he did play well against Nesmith in this regular season. So, Dex, for you, if you were kind of scheming things out and you're Indiana, how do you try to slow Jalen down?
I think they're going to try to have to pick him up full court. I think that's it. Try to get the ball out of his hands. Can you blitz him? Even if you don't go full court, do you want to blitz him as soon as he gets across half court? You want to make another Knicks player have to become the playmaker. And for a lot of times, that's been Josh Hart for the Knicks. Is he the valve and release guy that you want there? So I think you're going to see a lot of traps on Jalen Brunson as soon as he gets over half court. I think if you try to pick him up full court, get the ball in his hands. So the Knicks, who have a habit, and you know this, Ian, started getting their offense started a lot later in the shot clock. I think if that happens for the Pacers, that's advantageous for them. So I think you're going to see waves of defenders at Brunson. I think you will see Nesmith, if we're going to call him the Brunson stopper, to see if he can do it again here in the playoffs. But with Brunson, I think you're right, Ian. I think that was the first game you were referencing when they played the Pacers this season. I wonder how much he takes that personally, how much he's motivated by, obviously, as we talked about what happened last year in the playoffs. So I think you'll see waves of defenders, and we have to respect the defenders from the Pacers who've been very good throughout this postseason. And I think you'll see a lot of the guards they'll try to throw at him, even some bigger players. I think you could see as well thrown at him at times. But Jalen Brunson's going to get a lot of looks, and I think it's going to be to get the ball out of his hands early in the shot clock.
And Joe, for you, the bigs, Cat, Mitchell Robinson, and Miles Turner, what are your thoughts there on the front line, and how does it play out down there?
So there was that play in the Knicks, and I think it was Game 6, where Mitchell was in the corner bothering Jaylen Brown to no end. And the Cavs rave about the versatility of Jarrett Allen, but I didn't see him. Jarrett was not able to impact that series, especially as the series wore on. So Mitchell Robinson is substantially bigger. I would say nastier than Jarrett, and so and if he's going to be able to move his feet like that out on the perimeter, that will impact the series. The Pacers are one of those like actual 5-out teams. Miles Turner can shoot threes, so you have to be able to stay on the floor. You have to be able to get out there. So Mitchell's going to have to do that, but he seemed pretty comfortable with it. I also I've been thinking a lot about Cat. I really liked him at times in the Celtics series. I think he has a chance here. He's going to be going up against an all-star in Siakam, who beat up on Evan Mobley pretty well. So I think that maybe the series actually swings on these matchups. The Pacers really enjoyed an advantage as this last series wore on in the front court, and it comes down to, are the Knicks guys nasty enough to keep up? And that's what we're going to find out.
Yeah, I'm curious too, Joe. Like, we've seen teams, Detroit, Boston, put a smaller player on Karl-Anthony Towns and put the center on Josh Hart and kind of let the center roam and be a help defender where the center needed, and sort of double at Towns if they needed to do that. And so I wonder if that continues here in the Indiana series. Do you take a guy like Nesmith or Nembhard and put him on Cat and then muck things up there? It was interesting. I was listening to, this was a really, really good breakdown of the series. Knicks Film School, they did a show with Caitlin Cooper, who's all over the Pacers. And she said she actually thought initially Miles Turner would be matched up against Karl-Anthony Towns, so the Pacers would do something different and go traditional where other teams had not done that. So that's something I'm keeping an eye out for early on. But Dexter, when you look at the rest of the Knicks that we haven't talked a lot about yet, OG Anunoby, obviously Miles Bridges, excuse me, Mikal Bridges, and the rest of the cast, who do you think is the X factor here? Who could swing this series?
For me, it's going to be Mikal Bridges because I think the matchup for him, if he's guarding Halliburton early on in this game, I think it's a really good matchup for him just because of his length. We know Halliburton, the tall player, at 6'5", very funky release, but is so effective scoring. I think what he can do on defense. And I think the reason I say that also is, Ian, when you look at how well Bridges has played defensively throughout this postseason, he's been tremendous. He's been doing all the things we didn't see from him consistently throughout the regular season, and that's fighting over screens, not shying away from contact on the defensive end. And then he's got the confidence on the offensive end, right? Hitting a lot of shots late. He's been a clutch player for the Knicks throughout this postseason. He's had a lot of big moments, obviously 2 big defensive moments in games 1 and 2 against the Celtics. So the reason, because of his two-way ability and then the confidence level we've seen rise with this guy throughout the playoffs, I think that's why he's an X factor for me. But when you add all the guys here, Ian, Wingstop is going to have to be Wingstop, right? They're going to have to deliver here in the postseason, this matchup against the Pacers. But I think Bridges leading the way in the way he's been playing, I got him as the X factor among those 3 guys.
I think he's been the most important, Nick, to borrow an award from college. I think that for everything you said, Dexter, for those reasons. And it seems like, too, he just, whatever it takes to win, I think that's his mindset. I mean, he said it in the playoffs. He said it in the regular season. But it seems like he's really playing that way, sacrificing his body, going 1,000% all the time. And it's interesting to me that when early fourth quarter now, you see the ball in Bridges' hands when Brunson takes a rest, and Bridges has been doing really well in that spot. You go back to that Boston game, his play, I believe it was game 2, fourth quarter, was key. He helped bring them back. And so that early fourth quarter, Bridges with the ball in his hands has been really impactful for New York so far. Let's see how it goes in Indy. Joe, both teams into account here, who is your X factor in this series?
My X factor is whoever the Knicks use to break that press. They're not going to, they are probably not going to be able to rely on Jalen Brunson to just bulldoze his way up the floor. And then if he does, it's so much harder to get into the offense because once you get across the timeline, the Pacers don't stop. So that was an adjustment the Cavs never made. They never got that second guy in there for a skip pass to get the ball ahead and set up. Is it Bridges? Is Bridges the one who catches the ball on the other side of the timeline and allows everybody else to set? Does he have that skill set? I think he does. So that's a possibility. But it's whoever they have to help break the press. And then beyond that, when I'm thinking about X factors, again, this is the stylistic thing, but it's like with that pressure that the Pacers use, I don't know that the Knicks will be able to be as good in isolation as they were against the Celtics. So it is who out there in the half court set is going to make that extra pass to keep the ball moving and get the open shot.
Yeah, I think you're dead right there. It's going to be something to keep an eye on all series long. Right now, we are going to shift to a segment called What We Learned. What We Learned, presented by Binghamton University. Binghamton University was named the top school in the SUNY system, according to recent rankings from the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Visit binghamton.edu for more. All right, fellas, the coaches. I think we learned something that Joe referenced earlier about Tom Thibodeau and the way he approached the minutes this season with the Knicks. I mean, look, injuries can happen at any time, so maybe this narrative flips, and it could flip on a dime. But you looked at the Knicks, and it seemed like, I don't want to say they were fresher, but they were able to handle late-game situations, were not gassed. And then you look at maybe a Cavs team where Donovan Mitchell said he was feeling tired. I think it was after game 1. And they had made it a point, Cleveland, to not play their guys big minutes in the regular season. Joe, in your view, what we've seen so far, does it validate Tom Thibodeau's approach with playing time? Does it say anything about it? Where are you on that?
This is something that teams are racking their brains about in Boston, in San Francisco, obviously in Cleveland, like these even maybe with the Lakers, like you're talking about usage injuries after a regular season in which you really tried to manage it. And it's still, it gets to you because either the high minutes that suddenly you're playing in a postseason, so generally speaking, you're right. We are one sprained ankle away from talking about this in a totally different light. But the Knicks, again, they just seem like they've been able to handle it. The Pacers, of course, are going to try to, push, like have the same kind of relentless pressure on both sides and see if the Knicks can keep up. But yeah, the so far you would have to say the way that Tibbs has managed this, it seems like the Knicks might be in a better position to handle that than maybe the Pacers' previous opponent.
Right. And Dexter, Tom Thibodeau, what have you learned about him in this postseason? What has he showed you?
I think he's shown us that, and I thought the criticism for him all the time wasn't that fair, Ian, in that he can make adjustments. We saw him go to the switch everything defense against the Celtics. That was not something he had deployed during the regular season, shown at all. And I think if he held that was a good tactic for him to hold. Have we seen the willingness for him to always go deep into his bench? No, we still haven't seen that. And that could be a huge factor in the series in terms of the fact the Pacers go 10 deep and the Knicks are really only going 7. But I think he has made adjustments in game. I think we saw in Game 4 against the Celtics, he played Miles McBride and Mitchell Robinson key minutes down the stretch when they helped spark that comeback. He's put the ball in Mikal Bridges' hands, as you noted, Ian, early in fourth quarters. So I think the notion that Tibbs can't make adjustments through the playoffs has been dispelled. And the other thing is, the minutes police. They were out in full force throughout the season. You haven't heard much about the minutes police here in the playoffs around the Knicks. And in fact, now the narrative is, as Joe talked about, the minutes that the Knicks have played, their starters particularly have played, might bode well for them here in the playoffs where they have been ready in late game situations. They have not been fatigued. So I think the little things is you've seen that he can make adjustments. Tom Thibodeau is one of the best coaches in the NBA. You can nitpick. Every coach isn't perfect, but he definitely has made adjustments when it counted. He did it against the defending champs, and we'll see if he further makes adjustments here against the Pacers.
Yeah, I'm a detective in the minutes police precinct, 34th Street. So I want to wait and see a little longer. I want to see how it plays out conference finals and if the Knicks get through to the finals. But certainly to date, the Knicks have looked very good late in these games. And also, we should say, their training and athletics staff was named the Training Athletic Staff of the Year in the NBA. That's a peer-voted award by the NBA Trainers Association. So another credit to where things have gone for the Knicks health-wise. I want to just hit quickly on the Thibodeau hot seat because I was the one talking about it before the playoffs, how things didn't go well, particularly in that Detroit series. I thought there were going to be some hard conversations about many things in the organization, including the head coach. But now, obviously, you get through Detroit, you shock the world, you get through Boston. Tom Thibodeau is not going anywhere. That seat is as cool as a seat gets, and it's a credit to him and what he's gotten these Knicks to do over these last few weeks. Joe, I want to hit quickly around the NBA a little bit, and I know all the talk is about Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Durant and where those two go via trade and how does it affect multiple franchises. Those are going to be the two big dominoes. But not a lot of people are talking about LeBron James, and so I'm just wondering, man, if somebody said to you, hey, you got to put your mortgage on LeBron being a Laker next year or being somewhere else. I'm not going to hang you on this, but what do you think? Where would you go?
I mean, I have so firmly planted my flag on the hill that he is retiring a Laker.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been saying it for years and years. I had an interesting conversation very recently with somebody close to LeBron, talking about, generally speaking, interest. Now, it's not on LeBron's part necessarily, but there was just this discussion about well, we really want to help the Cavs. Well, how would they do that? And that didn't come up. When you think about LeBron, you have to think about he has said that he will always be a max player. So that leaves him with the Lakers, an insane trade that no one responsibly should make for a 41-year-old to send out the money it would have to take to handle his contract. Or these couple other teams that have cap space that I wouldn't see him being interested in. So that's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
If he was going to take this incredible pay cut and basically play on either a veterans minimum, which the Cavs are going to be over the second apron, so it would be so hard for them to pay almost anybody anything that comes in. But I guess that would be an option for LeBron. But beyond that, his son is literally on the team. He likes that. He's got a second child who's going to be at college in Arizona, but then his younger daughter obviously lives at home in Los Angeles. He's not the kind of guy that wants to live away from home. And so I just don't see that. I don't see the scenario where he leaves.
Yeah. The only thing I would add is, and this is a couple years back, but at that season where he broke the scoring record, I was told that if he wanted to go somewhere after that year, Lakers were willing to work with him hand in hand and figure something out there. Obviously, they end up going to the conference finals, I believe, that year after the moves that Rob Pelinka made. And so it was a moot point then. But I just think based on that, I'm sure the Lakers would work with him if he did want to go elsewhere. We are going elsewhere now to the Talkback, which is piloted, I should say, by my friend and yours, Matt Spendley, the Big Spend, SNY CEO of social media. And Matt, what do you have for us?
What's up, guys? Thanks for being here. I'm a little blurry, so I'm going to have to refresh my screen. But let's start with the first question. So, Joe, I want to ask you this, and then, Dex, I'm going to come to you about the double bigs lineups for the Knicks. Our guy Gatsby on YouTube is asking, hey, guys, with the Pacers being a poor rebounding team, could the Knicks use that to their advantage? So we know the Pacers are not an offensive rebounding team, not part of their identity at the pace they play. The Knicks, with their bigs lineup, have really been able to take advantage there. So, Joe, I'm curious for you, when you look at the matchup, what do you think about the rebounding and that being a potentially big part of the series?
Yeah, I mean, that is something that the Knicks definitely want to hit on. When the Pacers momentarily felt like they were, I don't know if in trouble is the right way to say it, but the Cavs had won game 3. And, the question was, is this series going to shift? What the Pacers did was they doubled down on the pressure we've been talking about all for the entire show. But then the other thing that they did was they made a fundamental commitment to rebounding. This was something that was put up on chalkboards inside the Pacers facility, at dry erase boards, just like to a man that they were going to find a way to rebound at both ends. And it worked. I think the final statistics, like that rebounding night, were about even, but the Pacers were ahead by 41 at halftime. And they were better in that series than they had been during the regular season, and then certainly what you would have thought given who the Cavs had with those two bigs. So, yes, the bigs we've been talking about on the Knicks have to hit the boards, but you need Josh Hart out there cleaning it up, from the position that he plays, and Bridges as well.
And obviously different teams, but last year in the Knicks-Pacers series, whoever won the rebounding battle won the game. So, obviously, some more to see this year. But, Dex, I'm curious for you, talking about, Cat and Mitchell Robinson, who we talked about a little bit earlier. In the playoffs, they've played 90 minutes together in 12 games, plus 13 net rating per 100 possessions. They only played 47 regular season minutes together, obviously because of Mitch's health. It's been something that Tibbs was asked a lot at the end of the year. Is this a lineup you're going to use? And he went to it against the Celtics. Do you think we'll see it against Indiana, given how different their personnel is?
I think you will. And I don't think Tom Thibodeau is going to be scared to use lineups where, especially if Cat's in foul trouble, which he has a penchant for doing, where he'll go to Mitchell Robinson more and play him heavy minutes. I think Game 4 against Celtics was an indicator, as I talked about before, where Tom Thibodeau was willing to even play Mitchell Robinson solo in lineups without the double big lineup. But I do think we'll see some more double big minutes, and I think it's because Tom Thibodeau is going to look at some of the numbers here when it comes to the Pacers. They're averaging and giving up 16.2 second chance points per game here in the postseason. And then with Robinson on the floor, guys, Mitchell Robinson is grabbing 39% of the Knicks misses, right, when they miss there. So getting those second chance points, and I think it's going to be huge. Second chance points are going to be huge in this series. So if you can also have that double big lineup out there where you get minutes for Mitchell Robinson, you still get the spacing from Cat on the floor, that can be huge. So I think Tibbs has shown the willingness to make the adjustments. I think he will use it, and we'll see a little bit more of it in the series. And I think the data's been good. As we've seen a limited sample size in the regular season, as we've gone forward, we've seen more of how it's looked good. So, yeah, I do expect to see more of that this series.
And then last year, the Knicks missed Mitch in the series against the Pacers. He only played in Game 1 and then didn't play the rest of the series. So it's a thing that the Pacers did not see in the playoffs last year. Ian, I want to switch gears a little bit, coming to you from our guy, the Cooler, asking, do you guys think Obi Toppin and Tyrese Halliburton have extra motivation to beat the Knicks? The Knicks passed on Halliburton in the draft in 2020, as did several other teams, and gave up on Obi a couple years ago after he was dealt. So for those guys, I know Halliburton talked a little bit yesterday before the series began about, his reception to MSG. The Pacers definitely reveled in the victory a little bit last year after they won Game 7 at MSG. So for you, what do you think about those guys and the Pacers in general coming to New York to potentially beat the Knicks?
Yeah, with Halliburton, I don't think his motivation would stem from the draft. I think it would stem from going forward here, going to the finals, but also what happened last year and wanting to do it again and like reveling, as Matt said, in that villain role because he played it well last year. But Obi Toppin, look, I'm guessing. I'm just going to guess. I don't think anybody would say it publicly. I don't think he would say it publicly because there'd be no reason to. But I do, if I'm guessing, I think he'd be very motivated to play well against the Knicks. They did move him at the end of towards the end of his rookie deal. He, never got a consistent opportunity. I would say playing behind Julius Randle, it made sense for him not to get that opportunity. But I think there was some frustration, and so I do think that he will be motivated against his hometown team. And whether he says it publicly or not, I do think it would be there.
And Obi, a big part of that depth that I think is one of the keys to the series too with Indiana. I mean, it's what we saw last year. Also, obviously, the Knicks look like a different team, but the Pacers and how deep they go, will be critical to the series. So that's what I got, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. So, fellas, we are going to wrap up here momentarily with final thoughts. But actually, I'll save that. I'll save my final thought. I want to hear from you guys first. When you're looking at this series, game 1, Wednesday, what are you looking at immediately in this series that lets you know it's going to go the Pacers' way or it's going to go the Knicks' way in terms of game 1?
For me, I'll say the Knicks' defensive intensity. How do they come out game 1? We've seen at times, Ian, where they've just, not had the intensity, and the team has talked about it, players have talked about it. They're not, locked in on the defensive side of the ball. I think how locked in they are on the Pacers, and if they are locked in, then how they're able to get the crowd, which is ready to explode here in New York. We've all seen the videos. They're ready to go crazy. Can they get the crowd behind them? Can they give them more of a reason to cheer? I think if the Knicks come out with some of the same energy they had in Game 6 against Boston, I think that bodes well from them. I think also if it goes the other way and the Pacers come out with really strong energy, especially on the offensive end, how do they weather that storm? So I think the first, I'll say 5 to 6 minutes of this game and just who's bringing the requisite energy on defense and then offense, and also what the Pacers might throw to the Knicks on defense will tell me a lot. So I'm really looking at just the energy the Knicks bring on the defensive end in game 1.
Yeah, fascinating. And how about you, Joe?
So a lot of thoughts run through my head on this. What we've been talking about all day with the way the Pacers play. Can the Knicks keep up? Rebounding is an issue. The Pacers bench was awesome in the previous series, and as a team, they shot it great, especially on the road, which is not typical in the playoffs. So can Indiana come back into this building where they had won the previous year and have the same shooting numbers that they had against Cleveland? That's a question. There is a matchup that I wanted to talk a little bit more about, and we have touched on it, of course, which is Halliburton and Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
I am wondering about Jalen, and we talked about the little bit of extra motivation. If you guys remember, last year, it was not long before that series started that Team USA made its announcement of who would be on the Olympic team. And you had Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson, who were both a part of the 23 World Cup team. Halliburton, not Brunson, was taken for the Olympics. Brunson was not happy about it. He really didn't want to make last series about that. He tried to stay as far away from it as he could, but we know how that series went. So now you have a case where, and he says that he and Tyrese are friendly. That's fine. I know they got along well when they were traveling together in 23. But you've got a case where there's a player he's being compared to, a player that was picked over him for the Olympics, and that same player who got the better of him in the playoffs last year. So is that stuff on Jalen's mind as he takes the floor tomorrow night?
So maybe a referendum on the USA Basketball Grant Hill decision. I don't know if Grant's going to be involved in any of these games, but that would make it even more fun. All right, so he won't be. My final thought, just a PSA, in my opinion, don't throw garbage at Brian Windhorst. Windhorst, obviously, he's a public figure. He's on everybody's screen all the time. That means certainly he is open for scrutiny. You're open. Anybody's welcome to disagree with him. You want to yell at him, okay. But if you're going to throw garbage at Brian Windhorst, take a second and say, what has happened in my life to get me to this point to where I'm strongly considering throwing garbage at someone who covers the NBA. It's not acceptable. It's not a good look. Don't do it. That's my PSA. Looking forward to game 1 Wednesday. And at the Putback, we will be back with you guys later in the series, probably next week. Appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you soon.